If all's well that ends well, then when it doesn't end well, it's an absolute disaster. And oh man, have title fights in this insane sport we sometimes call cage fighting ended in absolutely awful ways. It does not matter how great that fight was going up to that climactic moment, it instantly made everybody feel bitter and sad and angry and entirely unsatisfied. Let's relive those feelings right now. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the 10 most catastrophic endings to title fights ever. Number 10, Predator Never Die. The Bellator Rising events were some of the cooler cross-promotional deals we've gotten in the recent history of the sport, back when Bellator was still a thing, RIP. Their second show was to crown the champion of a new division for the long-running number 2 promotion in the sport, flyweight. And who better to kickstart that division on that particular show than former Bellator and Rising bantamweight champion Kyoji Horiguchi, a standout Japanese fighter throwing down in Saitama Super Arena. It doesn't get much better. Just kidding, yes it does. Another homegrown talent, the up-and-coming 23-year-old Makoto Shinryu. He was the former Deep and Cage Fury FC flyweight champ, 3 finishes in his last 3 appearances with Ryzen. This was a no-brainer choice to kick off this division, and sadly that just wouldn't happen. 25 seconds into this thing, Kyoji reached out with his left before throwing a right and gave Shinryu a big ol' heaping helping of fingers to the eye. Yum!
Yeah, as Horiguchi came out, those fingers got extended. They absolutely touched the right eye of Makoto Shinryu. Yep, and the fight is over.
The fight is over.
He says that he can't see out of that eye.
Just like Tom Aspinall, Makoto couldn't fucking see a thing, mate, and as a result, the fight was stopped. The title remained vacant in the division that hadn't even existed until now. A total disaster. Worst kickoff to a division possible, and the promotion died before they could even rectify it. Shinryu actually suffered a pretty nasty corneal abrasion with some bleeding and swelling inside the eye, so definitely wasn't good to go 25 with the Typhoon. Later that year, they'd rematch for Rising Gold, with Horiguchi coming out on top. Number 9, 86th for life. Late replacement title fights are always a roll of the dice, but the SEG era early UFC learned the hard way that putting a fighter in the cage with no prep time can lead to a fight that absolutely sucks. Dan Severn was meant to fight for a second time for the UFC heavyweight title after his failed attempt to capture it in the belt's inaugural contest against Mark Coleman. Maurice Smith had shockingly taken the title from Coleman in his first defense, and so now Smith would have to overcome another wrestler and one of the best in the game in 1997. But Severn, this absolute lunatic, well, he fought at Pride 1, literally the week before UFC 15 when he was scheduled to fight Smith.
No, he's crazy.
After injuring his hand in Japan, Dan was out, and an already struggling UFC desperately needed a replacement fighter. The solution was honestly the best and worst possible choice: Tank Abbott, everybody's favorite loser. And I say that with affection. Dude came up short in 4 UFC tournaments, but he fought like a bar brawler because he was one and everybody loved him. Perfect guy for a quick fix, other than the fact that you threw him in the cage on days' notice. Tank shot his whole wad in the first 6 minutes, but truthfully was in a pretty solid spot on top of Smith. When the action slowed down though, because Tank's tank depleted, Big John stood them up, and oh dear God, I have never seen any human suck wind like that man did.
And Tank now starting to look tired.
After a couple leg kicks, Abbott, who was literally just hunched over gasping for air, he quit. He just said, nah, I'm done. I did what I could do.
I haven't been training, I've been partying. I stepped off a bar stool and stepped into the octagon tonight.
It was massively disappointing, especially from a fan favorite like Tank, but everybody was in a bad position that night. This was always the most likely outcome, and it unfortunately played out that way. Number 8, legendary disappointment. The scale of Pride FC's events was just stupid. The first time Fedor and Nogueira met at Pride 25 for the heavyweight title, it felt like this massive moment. Up to that point, but for a freak cut, Fedor was unbeaten. Nogueira had already reached living legend status and avenged his only ever loss against Dan Henderson. This fight was massive and a masterpiece. It is such a great fight.
What an amazing match. Best show ever. Nogueira's heart and soul kept him in the fight. Any other mere mortal would have succumbed to the onslaught.
Over the next year, both of their careers would surge towards the 2004 Heavyweight GP, and they would meet for a second time in the finals. Could Fedor do it again? Would Nogueira regain his gold? I mean, good lord, what a moment. The absolute peak of the heavyweight division in its short history. And then an accidental headbutt ruined everything.
Oh, he's cut. Fedor is cut.
Real bad. Badly.
Oh, that will be too bad.
We don't want to see That will be a no contest. I think.
Tournament of this stature end like this.
The tournament, the title, everything was on the line, and we had to stop it in the first 4 minutes because of a stupid cut from a stupid accident. Worst case scenario all around. The only reason it's not ranked higher is because it did lead us to the rematch for all those high stakes on the biggest card of the year, New Year's Eve, another all-time classic moment. But yeah, to see the tournaments ending earlier that year fall apart because of something so anticlimactic just sucked. Number 7, biggest massive failure, Diaz versus Masvidal, a fight built around a gimmick where there was literally only one ending that wouldn't have been acceptable in a bout that is meant to crown the baddest motherfucker.
Watch your profanity.
And that is a finish that is anything but bad, like a doctor's stoppage. Oh, you had to have a checkup in the middle of the fight and the dork with the medical degree decided that you're not the baddest
mommy fudger
because you got a boo-boo? What are we doing? Doctors should have been barred from the entire city. There shouldn't be any officials in BMF title fights. All right, now hyperbole aside, the outcome was probably headed for Masvidal being crowned BMF by Mark Kerr anyway. I mean, he was piecing Diaz up all fight, but the thing is, Dr. Stoppage is easily the least badass TKO. And when you're talking about Nate Diaz, he is the king of getting his dick kicked in and then making people look silly.
When you sneeze on me, I bleed. So it's not a thing.
It's amazing the BMF title survived that outcome, honestly. Number 6, Canadian Chaos. Okay, so a really bad decision isn't what makes for a title fight to be on this list, because there's a ton of those. That's a normal thing that happens in this sport. It needs to be a pretty extraordinary circumstance, and golly do we have one with GSP Hendricks. Now, the fight itself was totally fine. It was great, in fact. It's just everything after that. While the bout was a close one, it was actually fairly easy to read. Rounds 2 and 4 very clearly went to Hendricks, and rounds 3 and 5 to the champ. The first round was close in terms of perception, but if you watch it back, it's pretty hard to see it any way but for Johnny.
I think we may have a new welterweight champion.
And that's the thing, a pretty huge chunk of the MMA world did. Every media outlet listed on MMA Decisions gave the fight to Hendricks on that night. Now, again, a bad decision in and of itself is not worthy of the list, but then chaos erupts afterwards. The decision comes in, everybody is reeling, and then here comes GSP on the mic with this weird, wishy-washy, cryptic half-retirement speech.
I have to step away for a bit, and later on I'll make a point on that.
What the hell is even that? That is how the broadcast ended. Before fans could even process the decision, now GSP is leaving? The biggest star in the sport? The fuck is happening? Dana White was absolutely fuming.
You don't just say, hey, I'm gonna take a while off and maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. Whatever the hell it was that he was saying, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way.
It felt like the whole sport was collapsing. I am being a bit dramatic here, but seriously, it was one of those holy fuck what is going on nights. And we didn't really get the answers we needed at the presser either, just more confusion and outrage. Thank goodness that was not GSP's exit from the sport because, oh buddy. Number 5, no vacancy. A title fight that goes to a draw really has to be something special for fans to not be completely outraged that the resolution to the bout was that nobody won. That just doesn't sit right with sports fans. And it's pretty unique to fighting because most actual title matches in other sports don't allow for ties. So unless it's like Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 2, where it was just this epic thing, everybody is going to be sour about a draw. Grasso Shevchenko 2, BJ Penn versus Cal Uno, a fight that essentially banished the lightweight division to the Phantom Zone for years. But at least at that point, the UFC was still kind of dead and the lightweight division was relatively unestablished. The worst case scenario would be what happened with Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, the light heavyweight division, one of the most prestigious in the history of the promotion. Frank Shamrock, Tito, Chuck, and Randy, John Jones, Daniel Cormier. But when JBJ vacated, he left a massive vacuum at the top that was being randomly filled, it felt like. Jan, Glover, Yuri, and then Prohaska gets hurt, so a division that was already struggling has a vacant title again just 2 years after resetting. Even worse than the fact that the fight was a draw, it was a fight that frustrated a lot of fans in terms of the action itself, and perhaps most egregiously, we should have been moving on with things because a pretty substantial chunk of the community thought the judges should have given the nod to Ankh.
The telling thing is Blachowicz thought he lost the fight.
Right.
At the end of it, Blachowicz said, give him the belt.
The fight and situation sucked so bad, the UFC immediately booked a new vacant title fight with Jabal Hill and Glover Teixeira for literally weeks later.
Is that done?
Done. You're welcome.
Number 4. Hello, John. In my mind, I figured there were only 2 possible outcomes for Ciryl Gane versus Tom Aspinall. 1, Tom wins and we march on as everybody expected. Least impact, most likely. 2, Gane wins and completely destroys anything that heavyweights meant since Stipe Miocic lost the title to Francis Ngannou, since 2 other fighters with claims to best heavyweight in the world had already beat him. Little did I know there was a third option. A first-round eye poke that leaves Aspinall in somehow a worse spot than had he just lost.
People start booing me like it's my fault. Double faults in the eye, mate.
Because in MMA, there's only one thing you can't be, and that is a quitter. And while I think it was perfectly reasonable to stop fighting when an eye poke makes you blind, there are plenty who now see Tom and his legacy at heavyweight differently.
That's a pun.
Got it.
Yep.
Even worse for him, he might have, and very likely did, lose that first round. So he wasn't doing super great in the first place. And now we gotta do this whole thing over again instead of maybe something really cool if Poatan stepped up next. Not to mention, in the dying days of pay-per-view, $80 fucking for that finish, the only NC title fight finish to be called on the night, just the most bitter ending possible to end a card. I'm gonna gag if I keep talking about it. Number 3.
I'm here live with Vitor Belfort.
All right, time for an old man Tommy story. See, back in the old days, you know how we had to watch fights on pay-per-view, or we had to wait for it to come out on VHS. There was this other thing called DVDs coming out. I don't think it ever took off. Anyway, I did not see Randy Couture versus Vitor Belfort on pay-per-view because my family didn't have the little box thing to buy it. So I was always behind until the home release. Luckily, my local Blockbuster always had them, so I picked it up and ran home to watch what was surely an epic confrontation. To be fair, getting to see BJ Penn beat Matt Hughes made the rental worth it, but I was pissed when Belfort won the title by scratching Randy Couture's eye with the first missed strike he threw.
You know, the nature of the injury itself, but I wasn't sure I was going to get my vision back. I certainly didn't want to go out that way.
What the fuck? And it was a TKO! At least Ciryl Gane had the decency to damage Aspinall's eye with something illegal, that way the title wouldn't change hands. Vitor took the gold in the worst way possible, and light heavyweight did not need this mess. Randy was the unexpected star of the division, taking out Chuck Liddell and champ Tito Ortiz back-to-back, so for this whole debacle to happen and force a rematch was not what pre-Tough Boom Zuffa needed at all. Randy would gain the title back and put the galaxy at peace, but I'm still pissed about that rental to this day. Number 2, give me a break. By the time of the second Chris Weidman fight, Anderson Silva was one of the few fighters that casual fans would go out of their way to watch. The night they had their rematch for the middleweight title, I was in a room packed full of my family who couldn't have named 3 fighters other than Silva, but they wanted to see if he could win the rematch, if he could regain his title after that shocking KO loss that went mega viral. The card did about 1 million buys, but I suspect there were plenty of jam-packed living rooms like mine. And what did all these occasional MMA fans witness? Just one of the most traumatizing moments in the history of televised sports. Sleep well, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your brief foray into cage fighting. Not to get too far into it, but that type of break is uniquely awful in cage fighting because nobody is wearing anything to cover it up, like in most other sports. So yeah, not only did we not get a clean resolution to this saga between Weidman and Silva, although to be fair, I think the first round was indicating that they were probably headed towards a similar outcome to the first fight, but we also had to witness something stomach-churningly awful. Sure, everybody was bummed about the fight itself ending in a bad way, but watching this living legend crying out in pain as he gets carried away from the cage, it was just one of those nights you're laying in bed afterwards wondering why you watch this stuff. Number 1, disqualified. DQs are so incredibly rare in the UFC. It's just one of those outcomes that is really hard to come by. Most fouls are deemed unintentional anyway and lead to a no contest if they end a bout. So it's pretty damn hard to get disqualified, let alone in a title fight, a bout that is exceedingly rare in comparison to non-title bouts. This circumstance is so rare, it's only happened once. Petr Yan was well on his way to retaining the bantamweight title against Aljamain Sterling. He was up 2 rounds on 2 judges' cards with just 30 seconds left in the 4th round. That was absolutely going to be scored for him as well, putting him in Misha Tate just coast mode for the 5th and final. But then Yan did the dumbest thing possible.
Stop! Wait, that's illegal. Time. His knee was down. His knee was all the way down.
Since the knee was so obviously illegal, it was a DQ, and for the only time ever, a UFC title changed hands via disqualification. Now, that alone would have made this moment controversial, but when you factor in a lot of the fandom's dislike of Aljo and their perception that he milked the illegal knee, it was a perfect storm to make for the worst title fight finish of all time. The second fight would split a lot of fans on who actually won, but it was certainly a better showing from Sterling. Didn't matter. The ending of the first fight was so bad, it retroactively tainted the rematch in a lot of fans' eyes. Speaking of disaster endings to title fights, Aljo followed those two up with TJ Dillashaw walking out with an arm that was for all intents and purposes several strings of overcooked spaghetti twisted together. Now, that was not his fault, but that dude had a rough run with fans with that title. You know what the best ending to this video is? Thanking its editor, Max Randall. Please follow him on his socials and go check out his YouTube channel. A big old thanks to all those channel members scrolling along there on the screen. Truly, your support is so awesome. Thank you so much. Hit that join button and get some exclusive content. Like and subscribe because I do this all the time. Leave a comment about which of these outcomes pissed you off the most. And thank you kindly for watching. You have a good one now.